I've never told this story publicly before, mostly because I still don't have an explanation for what happened. But after carrying it with me for years, I feel like I need to get it out. This happened in America, on a deserted highway, late at night. At the time, I was living in a small town several hours away from my family. I worked long shifts, and one weekend I decided to drive back home after finishing work late on a Friday night. It wasn't the smartest decision, but I'd made that drive dozens of times before. According to my GPS, the fastest route was a long stretch of highway that cut through miles of empty land. No towns. No gas stations. Just road. By the time I got onto that highway, it was a little after midnight. The road was completely empty. No headlights ahead of me. No taillights behind me. Just my car, the hum of the engine, and the white lines flashing beneath my headlights. At first, everything felt normal. I turned the radio on to keep myself awake, but most stations were nothing but static. Eventually I turned it off and just drove in silence. That's when I realized how quiet everything was, too quiet. After about 40 minutes, I noticed something odd in my rearview mirror. I thought I saw headlights. At first, I didn't think much of it. Cars pass each other all the time. But as the minutes passed, the headlights stayed exactly where they were, far enough back that I couldn't make out the car, but close enough to know it was there. They weren't gaining on me, they weren't falling behind, they were just there. I sped up slightly. The headlights sped up too. I slowed down. They slowed down. That was the first time I felt uneasy. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just someone else heading the same direction. Still, I kept checking my mirror more often than I needed to. Then, without warning, the headlights disappeared. No turn signal. No passing lane, just gone. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. 10 minutes later, I saw something ahead of me. At first, it looked like debris in the road. Maybe a broken sign or a piece of tire. As I got closer, my headlights revealed something that made my stomach drop. A car was pulled over on the shoulder, completely dark. No hazard lights. No interior light. Just a black shape sitting on the edge of the highway. I slowed down instinctively. As I passed it, I glanced inside. There was someone sitting in the driver's seat. They weren't moving. Their head was tilted slightly forward, like they were staring at the steering wheel. I couldn't see their face. I told myself they were probably asleep or dealing with car trouble. Still, something about it felt wrong. People don't usually stop on roads like that unless they absolutely have to. I kept driving. About 5 minutes later, I checked my rearview mirror again. The headlights were back, only this time, they were closer. My heart rate picked up. I told myself not to panic. Maybe it was the same car that had been pulled over. Maybe they'd fixed whatever problem they had, but something didn't add up. If that car had just pulled back onto the road, it shouldn't have caught up to me that quickly. I changed lanes. They changed lanes. I sped up. They sped up. At that point, I was no longer comfortable. I considered calling someone, but I didn't have signal. My phone showed no service. That's when the car behind me flashed its high beams, once, then twice, then it stayed on. The bright lights filled my car, blinding me through the mirrors. I slowed down, hoping they would pass me. They didn't. Instead, they stayed right behind me, matching my speed exactly. That's when I noticed something else. Their headlights looked wrong. They were uneven, like one was slightly higher than the other. And they flickered, not like normal headlights, but like they were struggling to stay on. Suddenly, the high beams turned off, the car dropped back, then, without warning, it disappeared again. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I told myself that was it. That whatever weird situation that was, it was over. Then my radio turned on by itself. Static filled the car, loud enough to make me jump. I reached to turn it off, but before I could, a voice came through the speakers, not a song, not a DJ. A voice that it was distorted, like it was being played through broken equipment. I couldn't understand the words, but it sounded low and slow, almost like whispering that I slammed the radio off. My hands were shaking now that I checked my GPS. According to it, the next exit was still 20 miles away. That's when I saw someone standing in the road ahead of me. I hit the brakes. The figure didn't move. They were standing directly in my lane, facing me. As my headlights lit them up, I realized it was a man. He was tall, wearing dark clothes, and standing perfectly still. His arms hung at his sides. I swerved into the other lane to avoid him. As I passed, I looked over. He turned his head and watched me. His face was completely expressionless. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I just kept driving. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. A few seconds later, I checked my rearview mirror. The man was gone, but the headlights were back, right behind me. Closer than they'd ever been before. The car tailgated me aggressively now, swerving slightly, almost like the driver couldn't keep it straight. Then, slowly, it pulled into the lane beside me. I refused to look over at first, but something made me. The car was the same one I'd passed earlier on the shoulder. The windows were dark, but the driver's window was rolled down. The man behind the wheel was the same one who had been standing in the road. He was staring straight ahead, not looking at me. Then, without turning his head, he smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. It was wide. Too wide, and then he mouthed something that I couldn't hear it, but I knew it was meant for me. Suddenly, he slammed his brakes and fell behind me again. I floored it. I didn't care about speeding tickets. I didn't care about anything except getting away. A few minutes later, I saw it, the exit. I took it without slowing down. As soon as I left the highway, my phone buzzed, signal that I pulled into the first gas station I saw and parked under the bright lights. My hands were shaking so badly I had trouble turning the car off. I sat there for a long time, just breathing. When I finally worked up the courage to look at the highway, there was no sign of that car. No headlights. No movement, just darkness. I stayed at that gas station until morning. To this day, I don't drive that highway at night anymore, and sometimes, when I'm alone in my car and the road is quiet, I still check my rearview mirror, half expecting to see those uneven headlights staring back at me.